Hello friends, and welcome to another absolute disaster of a video. Today I'm going to be talking to you about drum gating and creating what I hope to be a simple but very effective overview of when and how to gate your drums for the best overall sound. Let's dive in. So here we are in Pro Tools, and I've got a pretty basic set of drum tracks. We've got kick, snare, two toms, overhead, and room. I'll play those for you now. Notice I've got a kick sample too, but we're keeping that muted for the time being. And this is what we are working with. So, nicely recorded tracks. I have really no complaints. They fit the vibe of the song that they go with. And really what I want to do is show everyone how I would just subtly shape up these sounds and lay the foundation for more effective processing as we go through the song and as we go through mixing our drum tracks. So, and you'll notice I actually already had silencer turned on the kick. I can turn that off and show you just in solo what it sounds like without any gating. And then with. Cool, so it gets rid of a decent amount. I can turn off ghost notes, that'll help. There we go. I knew something was wonky because it wasn't just totally obliterating everything, but the kick signal. This is one plugin where I know there's a lot of people out there that they're selling plugins, they're trying to get you to buy their plugins, whatever it is. The whole world is built off of consume. And then there's a counterculture to that is growing in popularity where people are saying, no, you don't need anything like this. You can do this all with stock plugins. Well, here is a plugin that I would highly recommend paying money for. I paid money for it. I paid my own money for it. I really love this plugin. This is the best drum gate that I've ever used, and it's also very simple. So why don't we start with something easy peasy like kick drum? I'm just going to go totally factory default on this. Hopefully that's, well, easier said than done. I can just revert back to, yeah. And this will be kind of a tutorial through this plugin as well, and also just a general overview of how I would gate drums. So jumping in, here is, again, nothing. And then with the plugin, are we done or what? You know, it's that good. I'll show you some controls here. There's really just four. Okay, I'll say 5. I haven't used the side chain at all, so we won't talk about that today. I'll just leave it at that. But there are 5 very important, actually, I'm sorry, 6. It's growing. 6 very important controls here. Up top, you've got an instrument selection between kick, snare top, snare bottom, and toms. So we're on kick, obviously. The threshold is probably the most important control on this gate, and most gates for that matter. Reduction is how much gain reduction is applied. So with it all the way up, as in no gain reduction, we still have bleed. And listen to how it goes away as I turn this down. So that's a really, really powerful control. It's not necessarily that you want to just turn it all the way down, because the thing with drum gating is that there is such a thing as going too far. You want to make sure that you still have cohesion to the drum set and that it still sounds like a unit together. So I generally don't go that far. In fact, quite often, especially with snare, I go up a little bit, maybe to just -20 or so, because of reasons I'll get to here in a bit. So for now, we're just going to leave that at -40. The D-bleed is really powerful. It's almost like a tone control. Let me show you what I mean. As we go to the right, increasing the percentage, the sound coming through gets duller. But as you'll notice if I go to the other side, especially with that first hit, this side is crispier, but you're also kind of losing out on the how well it's gating. So it kind of depends on what you want your workload to be. Do I want it to gate really, really well, but need to EQ the crap out of it to regain some of that top end crispness? Or do I want to let a little bit of that top end poke through at the risk of maybe getting some cymbal bleed? It's up to you. And then, of course, the last one is pretty self-explanatory, but the length of the envelope as it closes. This could be seen as like a release knob. So turning it down just shortens the amount of time that the gate stays open. I don't believe in right or wrong answers for this. I think it's perfectly acceptable to do what sounds good. In fact, that's what I would encourage you to do. And we'll get to the ghost note whenever we move on to snare, which is now. I think the kick sounds great just like that. And we haven't applied any EQ, any compression, anything like that. We won't be covering that in this video. I just want to cover gating. So let's move on to snare. We'll listen to how it sounds just on its own. Cool. Nice. Let's pull open the silencer plugin. Let's hear what we're working with the settings that I had rolling here before. Oh, do you see that little bit of automation? Let's check that out. So I'll show you how to do this as well. Easy peasy stuff. With whatever gate you are using, you can go up here under auto and just find threshold. Okay. Find threshold on this and then add it like I did reduction, but we're not going to do that. So add that over here, hit OK, and then when you go to this menu, you'll find the plugin title and then you'll find the parameter that you want to tweak. So you'll see that I've got some automation going on this track. Let's find out what that is doing. So I think the best place to illustrate this would be this build-up right here. So for the sake of this example, I'm actually going to turn ghost notes off because it's helping us. And let's assume that we have a different gate for a moment. Or we have a song where we are not letting ghost notes through. Maybe there aren't any, or it's just too sloppy with the gate on the snare top and we just don't want it. So let's listen to this buildup without the gate on. So just raw track. And just for funds, let's hear what a typical gate In fact, I'm not even going to use this one. I'm actually going to use the stock Pro Tools gate. Let's hear what this one would do. So you can hear the difference. And even if we go back to the beat, it's very, very choppy. It's not very natural sounding. You can, of course, listen in context, which of course I always recommend, and dial it in that way, maybe a little bit less gain reduction. It's just choppy results. It's really choppy results across the board. So what I like to do on buildups, as you can see, is automate the threshold. We're going to go back to the gate that I love, and we are going to first remove this automation that I wrote. We're just going to destroy it. And then let's listen to how the gate handles this on its own. And let's solo that. I'm going to remove this automation here too. So you can hear it's kind of choppy. Not amazing. So, yeah, it clicks on all of a sudden right there. It's just kind of weird, right? I'll show you what I do. So first, I like to tab to transient and start off at the beginning of the sequence. It's going to be crescendoing upwards, and so in other words, it's going to start very quiet. And I like to hear where it finally clicks in. So it kind of clicks in there, but it's not perfect. It kind of, you can hear a little bit of a click as it turns on and lets those through. So I'm actually going to hold Shift and Tab and go one past it. And then I am going to pull this threshold down until this last hit comes through clearly. Now you can hear this one is the one that's kind of clicking and just barely making it through. But this last one, loud and clear. So now I'm going to start from the same spot and then just go to the one before it. And then I'm going to pull it down again. I'm holding Control on Windows so that I get a much finer sweep of the parameter. And then, so we just barely made it. Let's go a little lower. Now we're sounding good. And repeat. So now we'll come down. A little more. There we go. Maybe just a little bit more on this front one. Now we're letting all those notes through, but had we just put the whole song with the threshold that low, we're not really gating anymore. So that's why we use automation. Automation is key with gates. So now, and in fact, I'm actually going to scoot this, and you can highlight automation and use on the Windows. On Windows, it's the like left and right little bracket things. I'll put up something in the video so that you know what I'm talking about. Because you can also use M and question mark, but I'm just using the short nudge. Whatever nudge is, basically, you can nudge these this way or that. Maybe I'll go a little bit lower. A little bit of trial and error. And it might not be perfect. If I really wanted to take care of that hit and make it really, really clean, what I could do is come back to my plugin, and we're going to automate the debleed function. Notice how I have it turned to the brighter side. That's letting in a bit of that symbol, which I, maybe it doesn't bother me, maybe it really bothers me, who knows. But I can find that those first two hits where that symbol kind of bleeds through. Let's actually turn this the opposite way by about the same amount. What does that do? In fact, we could go a little further with it. You could do that if you wanted to. You could also slope it so it brightens up as it goes, and we're getting the maximum amount. We're getting less of that symbol bleed that way. So that's a really, really powerful technique here for preserving each of these hits and yet reducing the symbol bleed the best we can, and ultimately, isolating the snare track as best as possible so that as we go down the line using EQ, using compression, we can get the most out of our processing, and we're not going to be worried. Well, more than worried, we're not going to be dealing with that processing getting applied to like the hi-hat or cymbals that are bleeding through or toms, because the snare is dead center, and it's also going to be messing with your stereo spread if you've got bleed from different instruments that you have panned out across the spectrum in that center channel. All of a sudden, you're going to have like hi-hat, hi-hat, hi-hat pop up on every backbeat, or the toms are going to not be super clear and crisp where they are living in that spectrum. So this is really, really good stuff to be doing with your tracks. And we can do the exact same thing to the snare bottom track. All we've got to do is either Alt-click or I believe Option-click and drag this plugin down to our snare bottom track. We're going to replace, in this case, because I'm replacing an old copy of Silencer. Contains automation data. Changing the plugin will delete this. That's old automation. Operation is undoable. Do you really want to change the plugin? Change. So now when I go to my, you won't have to deal with those, by the way, if you're just putting it on a new track. But now when I go to my snare bottom track, I should have all the same automation already built in, including the threshold as well as that debleed tonal shaping. And I didn't have to do anything extra. The only thing I might need to do is come on here and select snare bottom. Now you can hear that we ought to have a little bit of a snare roll here right after this tom hit. And that's getting lost. So we could do a similar thing there. And all we've got to do is select our threshold. And if you'd like to, you could group these tracks if you're editing them together. Name it snare. And that way, well, I think I might have to, let's see, if you go to globals, automation mode, I wonder if automation is, let's see, maybe controls. So for insert, we'll say insert C, and we'll move so that both of these are the same. Let's see if that works. So it's on insert C, both of them. Let's go here. Haha. So now we can edit these together. And again, we only have to do this whole thing once. So I think this first one is a tom hit. Yeah. But right after that, let's lower that threshold a little bit. Boom. We're done. And now we've got that fill coming through loud and clear. You could do that anywhere you've got a little bit of discrepancy. My recommendation is to listen to the bulk of the song, see where the... Oh, I'm so sorry. I actually played that without the gate on. I'm a silly goose. Cool. If you wanted to modify that a little, you can. If you wanted to do it hit by hit, you're more than welcome. I think for the sake of this, you get the point after we did that more in depth on the build up there with the stair steps. Let's see. Yeah, as I was saying, you can listen to the whole song, see where most of the hits are landing on the threshold, adjust that to where you think home base is going to be and make the workload easiest for you. Too high and you're not going to be catching every hit. Too low, you're going to be catching weird stray hits from other instruments and getting into some stuff you don't want. The ghost note control, as promised, I think this will affect both plugins. I'm not 100% sure. Let's find out. If I... Come on. There we go. Did it work or not? It's just going really weird and slow. Okay, so it's just on the one. I think that's for automation, the thing that I changed. Anyways, snare top, ghost notes. Let's hear the difference between having this button off and on. So off. You can hear some stuff in the background, but it's pretty muffled and it's being filtered out for the most part. So with it on, we're allowing those ghost notes to actually come through. And that's another parameter you could sit here and tweak all day to your heart's content. I'm finding that with this particular track, when I listen with the snare top, snare bottom, with the snare bottom ghost note button turned on, and then with my overheads, I feel like I'm getting enough of those ghost notes. You can tweak that stuff and get it closer if you'd like. Of course, you could bring your overall threshold just down if you wanted to do that. Here's an easy way to do that. Just select everything. Sorry. I don't think it'll work. Yeah, it'll do it section by section if I do that. 1 second. So find a point. There it goes. And then select everything all the way back and then just lower that. So that way you can lower everything and you preserve your automation. So if I wanted to, maybe I feel like, I should have probably lowered that threshold a little more after all, then you can try that. Sounds good. And now that those are isolated really nicely, like I said before, any further processing I do to them, be it EQ, compression, adding reverb, all that kind of stuff, will be so much more effective because I'm not going to be, especially with compression, I'm not going to be affecting other elements like the hi-hat or the toms or things like that. You want to have just enough separation between the tracks where you can process them effectively and get what you want out of them, but you don't want so much separation that they sound like cheap MIDI drums, basically. You want it to still sound like a real live drum set. Let's move on to toms. We've just got a few tom hits in here, and we're going to basically use the same technique here. Let's turn that on, and I'm going to do this soloed for now. A lot of times when I'm working with the fine detail stuff, I may dial it in soloed, but it's very, very important to listen to everything as a whole. So that's already working great. I think I may have some settings dialed in here. Let's see if I have any automation. I believe I do. So what I did earlier was I copy pasted that automation from the snare, the snare top and snare bottom that I did before I started this video. So it looks a little bit different, but it ends up with a similar result. So you would do the same thing, even if I was like, oh no, I lost it and Control Z won't work. I would start it here at the beginning of the buildup, and I would listen for where it starts to become clear, which is about this note. I'm still going to lower the threshold a little bit on that one, just because I don't want it to be squeaking by. I want to make sure it's as loud and thunderous as it's supposed to be. And doing this breaks it up into specific notes. So it looks like it didn't quite catch that note in there, but we can see roughly where that transient is at and put a dot. Cool. And again, if we wanted to, we could come here. There's a little bit of cymbal bleed, so we could come in here. D-bleed's also already leaning towards that duller, more isolated end of the spectrum. But let's see what happens if we dial it in a little more on that first hit. So turning it up, and then, yeah, cool. Again, the thing that you want to make sure is that you're not over dulling the instruments and that you're finding a balance between isolation and gating with punchiness and the transient nature of these instruments. So something that you might want to do, I told you we wouldn't get into EQ, but just in this example, something you might want to do following something like that is you could boost a little bit of that top end where the smack and kind of the click of the stick on the head is. And you could even go crazy. You could automate it just like you did this, so that when the D bleed is set really dull to get rid of that cymbal bleed, you could be boosting the most, or and gradually coming down with that boost. So gradually lowering that boost. Or you could do a very similar thing with a multiband compressor and maybe an expander. Right? So when it smacks, you can really hear the skins on that thing. And so if I wanted to, I could easily automate that, like starting out crazy and then pulling it back down into something a little more reasonable. So anyways, other than that, with that build-up, let's see where we're landing for a lot of this other stuff. Looks like there's some tom hits here. Maybe some length that needs to be added there. That's a little better. Let's see how that affects our build-up. I think that's great. If we wanted to raise the threshold through here too, we certainly could do that. Again, it's not necessary to be ultra precise surgical with this stuff. This is good if it gets you to the end result you want. I'm just showing you what's possible. So something like that might be great, or you might say like, nah, it's too isolated. Like I actually want a little bit of that bleed in there so it sounds like a unit. But all this stuff is doing is clearing it up to where you have a better shot at processing these instruments as you go. Because these are just raw tracks at the moment. So we might want to raise that there. Cool. And some other interesting stuff you can do is basically like filtering before the gate. So if we were to put an EQ, I'm breaking my own rule here, but it's okay. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. If we were to put an EQ with a high pass, it might be possible to get rid of that. Not quite. We're starting to cut into the tom tone itself. I was hoping maybe we could filter out the hit that was triggering the gate to open right after. If we wanted to, there's other stuff we can do. Raising the threshold possibly. That actually helps a little bit. See, we're getting less of the cymbal. That's pretty good there. Let's make sure that we have the tom selected. We do. Yeah, other than that, maybe as a rule, I would just have this threshold set a little higher so it's not picking up some of that stuff. And then maybe if you're like, it's eerily silent, bring some of the bleed back. Nothing wrong with that. Helps it to all gel together. Now, if you're really working a session, you want to listen to everything through here. You want to sit here and listen to every single hit and make sure that the gate doesn't fail at any point. Or if it does, you're aware of it and you're okay and you're comfortable with the way that it sounds on everything. Cool. You would repeat the same process with that rack tom. And other than that, I think that sets you up pretty well for gating and for preparing your drum tracks for EQ, compression, or distortion, saturation, reverb, whatever you might want to do. This will get you there. Like I said, I highly, highly recommend Silencer from Black Salt Audio. I'm not affiliated with them. I just really, really like that gate. And I like sharing things that actually help us to make music and aren't just consumer fodder, just for no sake other than to spend your money. This is actually a plugin that I use on every session, and I absolutely love it. So I do recommend that. I think they have a free trial that you can check out, and I think that you'll end up loving it and wanting to get it. I don't think it's all that expensive. I also think that if you sign up for their newsletter, they send you discounts periodically. So my recommendation would be to go get the free trial, sign up for their newsletter when you do, and then just watch your inbox because they'll probably be sending you a sale notification pretty soon, and just get it as soon as you can. Even if you pay full price, I don't remember it being expensive. I don't want to misremember and say the wrong price, but I know it was well under $100. So I would highly, highly recommend that as a one-stop shop for all your drum gating needs. Truly, I would highly, highly recommend Silencer. So, yeah. I think that about wraps this up. If you enjoyed, please hit the like button on this and subscribe, just because it helps boost the channel and then therefore help other people. So it helps me to keep doing what I'm doing, which is hopefully helping others doing my damnedest to try anyways. And with that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day and happy gating.